Zim 7 appeared in the middle of Seoul's busiest street, like a magic trick gone wrong. One moment there was empty air, and the next moment a small creature stood there, sparkling like a disco ball. The alien looked like someone had mixed a child, with a beautiful crystal, standing barely 3 feet tall with skin that shifted colors like an oil spill in the sunlight. Dr. Minjun Kim was supposed to meet this visitor at the research facility, not in the heart of Hongdae where college students and tourists crowded every corner. But aliens apparently didn't always follow human schedules. Zim's huge purple eyes, bigger than dinner plates, blinked slowly as they took in the chaos around them. Cars honked, people shouted, and music blasted from nearby shops. The little alien tilted their head like a confused puppy, trying to make sense of this strange new world. Then something unexpected happened. People started noticing the sparkling visitor. "Oh my God, look at that!" someone yelled in Korean. Suddenly, dozens of smartphones appeared, all pointing at Zim like tiny black rectangles of doom. The alien had never seen phones before and assumed they were some kind of weapon. People began making weird barking noises, what humans call laughter, and Zim's scientific brain went into panic mode. The worst part came when people started crying. Well, not really crying, but tears of laughter rolled down their faces. To Zim, who had studied every disease in the galaxy, this looked like the beginning of a terrible plague. "Emergency! Emergency!" Zim squeaked in broken Korean, their voice sounding like wind chimes in a storm. They pulled out what looked like glowing stones from a small pouch and began waving them frantically at the crowd. The healing crystals were supposed to cure any illness, but instead of helping, they made people laugh even harder. Zim ran from person to person, pressing crystals against foreheads and chanting in their alien language. The crowd grew bigger as more people stopped to watch this tiny, panicked creature trying to save them from their own laughter. "Please do. Not die from the laughing sickness," Zim pleaded, their English mixed with Korean words they'd learned from language tapes. "I will fix you." Dr. Minjun finally arrived, pushing through the crowd of amused onlookers. He found his alien guest in the center of the chaos, standing on a bench and holding crystals above their head like a tiny rainbow wizard. "Zim!" Minjun called out. "What are you doing? Dr. Minjun, thank goodness you are here." Zim jumped down and grabbed the scientist's lab coat. "The humans have caught a terrible disease. They make strange noises and leak water from their face holes. I have been trying to heal them, but my crystals seem to make the sickness worse." Minjun looked around at the crowd of laughing people, all filming the confused alien with their phones. Some were actually wiping away tears of laughter, clutching their stomachs from giggling so hard. "Zim," Minjun said gently, trying not to smile. "They're not sick. They're laughing. It's a good thing." Zim's purple eyes grew even wider, if that was possible. "Laughing? This violent face-leaking is good?" "Yes, very good. It means they're happy." The little alien looked around at all the smiling faces, the phones still recording, and the general atmosphere of joy. Their crystalline features scrunched up in concentration, trying to process this information. But why do they leak water when happy and make those barking sounds? This makes no scientific sense. Minjun chuckled, which made Zim immediately point a healing crystal at him. "Not you too, Dr. Minjun. The laughing disease spreads quickly." This quest to understand human humor was going to be more complicated than anyone had expected. 3 days. After the street incident, Zim had filled 17 notebooks with questions about human laughter. They pestered Dr. Minjun constantly, following him around the lab like a curious puppy with too many scientific instruments. "We must investigate this laughter phenomenon in its natural habitat," Zim announced, pulling out what looked like a miniature spaceship from their bag. The device beeped and projected holographic charts into the air. "My research indicates that humans gather in specific locations to practice communal laughter rituals." Minjun rubbed his temples. "You mean comedy clubs?" "Yes. The comedy laboratory. We must go immediately for field research." That evening, Minjun found himself sitting in a dimly lit comedy club in Gangnam, watching Zim set up equipment that belonged in a NASA laboratory, not a place where people came to drink beer and laugh at jokes. The little alien had somehow smuggled in devices that hummed, beeped, and glowed in colors that hurt to look at. Zim people are staring, Minjun whispered. Good. They are curious about proper scientific methodology, Zim replied, adjusting what appeared to be a molecular scanner. I will document every aspect of the laughter process. Sound frequencies, facial muscle contractions, air composition changes, everything. The other audience members watched in fascination as the tiny alien pulled out notebook after notebook, setting up cameras at different angles and even opening small vials to collect air samples. Ladies and gentlemen, the announcer called out, please welcome Jin Park. Jin walked onto the small stage, immediately noticing the glowing alien in the front row, surrounded by enough scientific equipment to launch a rocket. He decided to roll with it. So, Jin began, I heard we have a special guest tonight, an actual alien. You know, I always wondered what aliens would think if they visited Earth. They'd probably be like, wow, these humans are weird. They pay money to sit in dark rooms and listen to other humans talk about their personal problems. The audience chuckled, but Zim shot up from their seat like a rocket. Excuse me, Zim called out, waving a glowing tablet. Your xenobiological data is completely incorrect. Aliens do not say wow. Our vocal cords are structured differently. Also, we find human social behaviors fascinating, not weird. You should update your research. The entire room went silent for exactly 3 seconds. Then someone in the back started giggling. Then someone else joined in. Soon the whole place was roaring with laughter. Jin stared at the serious little alien who was still holding up their tablet, waiting for acknowledgement of their correction. Did you just fact-check my joke? Yes. Scientific accuracy is very important even in humor rituals, Zim replied earnestly. Also, you said aliens would think Earth currency exchange for entertainment is strange. But actually, most civilizations have similar recreational commerce systems. The Rigelians have joke markets, and the Centaurians trade stories for food. The audience laughed even harder. People were wiping tears from their eyes, just like on the street. But this time, Zim noticed they seemed happy, not sick. Furthermore, Zim continued, consulting their notes, your statement about personal problems is misleading. Human comedy often addresses universal experiences that create social bonding through shared recognition of common struggles. Jin looked at Minjun helplessly. The scientist just shrugged and mouthed, keep going. Okay, Jin said slowly. So what would you find funny about humans? Zim thought seriously for a moment. You have tiny rectangular devices that you stare at constantly, but you call other people who stare at rectangular screens all day lazy. Also, you drink heated bean water every morning and claim you cannot function without it, which suggests severe chemical dependency, yet you judge other species for their dietary requirements. The room exploded with laughter again. People were pointing at their phones and nudging each other about the coffee joke. Zim looked around, confused but pleased. Are they enjoying my scientific observations? I think, Minjun whispered. You might be funnier than you realize. Hana Lee had always been the most patient person in Dr. Minjun's research team, which is probably why she volunteered to become Zim's personal humor tutor. She figured teaching an alien about Korean comedy would look great on her graduate thesis. She had no idea what she was getting herself into. Okay, Zim, Hana said, settling onto her couch with a bowl of popcorn. We're going to watch some K-dramas. This will help you understand Korean humor and emotions. Zim perched on the edge of the couch like a curious bird, notepad ready, surrounded by their usual collection of beeping devices. I am prepared to document all humor mechanisms. Hana started with a classic romantic comedy. Within the first 10 minutes, the male lead bumped into the female lead, and she said the line, I think I'm falling for you. Zim immediately paused the show and pulled out a calculator. This is very concerning, Hana. This female human claims to be falling, but she appears to be standing upright. Should we analyze Earth's gravitational anomalies in this location? No, Zim, it's just an expression. She means she's starting to like him romantically. Zim stared at the screen for a long moment. So humans use incorrect physics terminology to describe emotional states. This is very inefficient communication. For the next 3 hours, Zim treated the romantic comedy like a documentary about human behavior, disorders. They took notes on every metaphor, created charts about falling in love versus actual falling, and even drew diagrams showing the difference between literal and figurative language. When the male lead said he was over the moon about a date, Zim spent 20 minutes calculating the energy requirements for human space travel. Hannah, this male human claims to be above Earth's moon, but he is clearly still on the planet's surface. Is this some kind of delusion? Should we contact medical professionals? Hannah rubbed her forehead. It's just an expression, Zim. He's very happy. Why do humans use inaccurate location data to express happiness? This makes no sense. The next day, Hannah brought Zim to meet her family for dinner, thinking it would help the alien understand Korean culture in a relaxed setting. This was her second big mistake. Zim arrived carrying a briefcase full of research materials and wearing what appeared to be a tiny business suit made of shimmering fabric. They had prepared extensively for this humor field test. Honored family members, Zim announced formally, I will now demonstrate my understanding of Korean comedy traditions. Hannah's parents exchanged confused glances as the little alien pulled out a portable projector and began setting up what looked like a scientific presentation. First joke, Zim declared, pointing to a complicated diagram with arrows and mathematical equations. Why did the chicken cross the road? According to my calculations, there are 847 possible motivations, but the most statistically probable reason involves seeking nutritional resources on the opposite side of the transportation pathway. The family stared at the chart, showing chicken migration patterns, food distribution analysis, and traffic flow studies. The humor element appears to be the unexpected logical answer to a question that humans typically answer illogically. Zim continued enthusiastically. The mathematical probability of a chicken making this decision based on resource optimization is 73.6%. Hannah's little brother started giggling, not because he understood the joke, but because watching a tiny alien give a scientific lecture about chickens was absolutely ridiculous. Encouraged by this response, Zim moved to their second joke. What do you call a sleeping bull? A bulldozer. This humor works because it combines the animal bull with the construction equipment dozer, creating a wordplay that. Suddenly, Zim began glowing. Bright, pulsing colors rippled across their crystalline skin like a rainbow disco ball. The dining room filled with soft musical humming sounds coming from the alien. Oh no, Zim squeaked. This is very embarrassing. The family watched in amazement as their tiny guest continued to sparkle and hum involuntarily. What's happening? Hannah asked. It's my species mating display, Zim whispered, still glowing. It activates when we're excited or confused. I was trying so hard to understand why you laugh at my serious academic work that I triggered an inappropriate biological response. Hannah's father started laughing first. Then her mother joined in. Soon, the whole family was giggling at the mortified, sparkling alien who was frantically trying to turn off their own light show. I am not trying to mate with your family, Zim protested, which only made everyone laugh harder. This is purely accidental biological function. As the evening continued, Zim realized something important. The family wasn't laughing at their jokes, they were laughing with them, at the pure joy of sharing such a wonderfully weird moment together. Maybe humor wasn't about perfect delivery after all. Tai Min couldn't stop thinking about the tiny alien who had accidentally become the funniest act he'd ever seen. As a comedian who'd been struggling to find his unique voice for years, watching Zim effortlessly crack up an entire room just by being confused had given him an idea. He found Zim 3 days later at Dr. Minjun's lab, sitting cross-legged on the floor surrounded by psychology textbooks, still trying to solve humor like it was a mathematical equation. Hey there, little scientist, Tay said, crouching down to Zim's eye level. I'm Tay from the comedy club, remember me? Zim looked up, their purple eyes brightening with recognition. The human who tells inaccurate stories for entertainment purposes? Yes, I remember. Are you here for more xenobiological corrections? Tay laughed. Actually, I'm here because I think you're the funniest person I've ever met, and you don't even know it. That is impossible, Zim replied seriously. I have studied 847 human jokes and understand none of them. My humor success rate is 0%. That's exactly my point. Tay pulled up a chair. You're funny because you see everything we do as completely weird. And honestly, most of what we do is weird. We just don't notice it anymore. Jiho Park, Tay's writing partner, arrived with coffee and immediately became Zim's first test subject without knowing it. Why do you carry that steaming liquid in a paper container? Zim asked, pointing at Jiho's coffee cup. And why do you voluntarily burn your tongue with it? Jiho paused mid-sip. It's coffee. It wakes me up. Ah, so you consume heated bean water to alter your consciousness, because your natural sleep cycles are inadequate for your daily requirements. Tay started chuckling. See what I mean? But this liquid dependency suggests a serious biological flaw in human design, Zim continued earnestly. Do all humans suffer from this chronic fatigue disorder? Should I contact the Galactic Health Organization? Jiho looked at his coffee cup like he'd never seen it before. I never thought about it that way. Tay convinced Zim to spend the day people-watching in Myeongdong, Seoul's busiest shopping district. They sat on a bench with notebooks, ostensibly so Zim could study human behavior, but really so Tay and Jiho could collect material from the aliens' observations. Look at that formation, Zim said, pointing to a long line outside a popular cafe. Humans are creating a ritualistic queue to exchange metal discs and paper rectangles for heated bean water. They appear to enjoy the waiting process, even though they could easily heat their own bean water at home for a fraction of the resource expenditure. Jiho was frantically scribbling notes. That's actually brilliant social commentary. And observe, Zim continued, how they document the bean water consumption with their rectangular communication devices before consuming it. They appear to worship the heated liquid by creating visual records of its existence. A group of teenagers walked by, all staring at their phones while walking dangerously close to traffic. Fascinating. Zim pulled out a tablet and began typing. The young humans carry small rectangular gods that demand constant visual attention. They risk physical harm to maintain eye contact with these digital deities. The devices have clearly established dominance over their human servants. Tay was laughing so hard he couldn't breathe. Rectangular gods, that's perfect. It is concerning, not perfect, Zim corrected. This appears to be a form of technological possession. Should we organize an intervention ritual? They watched a businessman rush past, talking loudly on his phone while carrying 3 shopping bags and trying to eat a sandwich. This human is attempting to perform 4 separate tasks simultaneously, Zim observed. His stress hormones are clearly elevated, yet he chose this multitask approach voluntarily. It appears humans enjoy creating unnecessary complexity in simple activities. Why? Jiho asked, genuinely curious now. I theorize that humans fear efficiency because it would leave them with unstructured time, which apparently terrifies your species more than physical exhaustion. By the end of the day, Tay and Jiho had filled 2 notebooks with Zim's observations. Everything from escalators, moving stairs for humans too lazy to lift their feet, to street performers, humans who demonstrate skills for voluntary resource, donations from strangers, became comedy gold through Zim's innocent alien perspective. Zim, Tay said as the sun set over the city, I don't think you need to learn how to be funny. You already are funny. You just need to learn how to share what you see. For the first time since arriving on Earth, Zim looked genuinely puzzled in a different way. You mean humor is not about understanding human jokes, but about helping humans understand themselves? Now you're getting it, Jiho grinned. Zim stared at the bustling street, watching humans rush around with their rectangular gods and heated bean water, and for the first time, they smiled. Not because they understood the joke, but because they finally understood their place in it. 2 weeks after Zim's successful street observations, a popular Korean variety show called Amazing Korea invited the famous alien comedian for a live appearance. The producers had heard about the tiny crystal being who accidentally made people laugh just by existing, and they wanted to see this phenomenon for themselves. Zim spent 3 days preparing for what they considered their most important cultural research opportunity. They studied every variety show format, memorized Korean television protocols, and even practiced bowing at the correct angles. What they didn't prepare for was the chaos that would follow. "Ladies and gentlemen," announced the host, "please welcome our special guest from Andromeda Galaxy, Zim 7. The studio audience applauded as Zim walked onto the brightly lit stage, wearing what appeared to be a formal crystalline suit that shifted colors under the studio lights. They bowed precisely 45 degrees, just as they had practiced. "Hello, Earth. Humans of Television Studio," Zim said in careful Korean. "I am honored to participate in your entertainment broadcast ritual." The audience chuckled at the formal way Zim spoke, but the real entertainment was just beginning. "So, Zim," the host asked, "can you show us something from your home planet? Maybe how your people say hello." Zim's eyes lit up with excitement. Finally, a chance to share their rich cultural heritage with Earth humans. This was exactly the kind of cross-cultural exchange they had hoped for. "Oh yes, I will demonstrate. The traditional Andromedan greeting of eternal friendship," Zim announced proudly. "This is a very sacred ritual among my people." What happened next would become the most viral moment in Korean television history. Zim began to glow, their crystalline skin shifting through colors like a living rainbow. They raised their arms above their head and started moving in slow, graceful circles while humming in harmonics that sounded like a choir of wind chimes. The performance was beautiful, ethereal, and completely sacred to their species. The studio audience watched in amazement for about 10 seconds. Then someone in the front row started copying the movements. "Wow, this is fun," called out a young woman, raising her arms and swaying like Zim. The host, thinking this was all part of an elaborate comedy routine, joined in. "Come on, everyone, let's do the alien dance." Within moments, the entire studio was filled with 200 people glowing under the stage lights, waving their arms in circles and attempting to hum in harmony. The camera crew was laughing so hard they could barely keep the cameras steady. Zim stopped mid-ritual, watching in horror as hundreds of humans performed their most sacred cultural ceremony like it was a party game. "No, no, no," Zim squeaked. But their tiny voice was lost in the joyful chaos. "This is the sacred greeting of eternal friendship. It is not a dance. It is holy." But the audience was having too much fun to stop. Someone started clapping along with the humming. Others began adding their own creative spins and moves. The whole thing had turned into an impromptu dance party featuring an ancient alien religious ritual. Zim stood frozen in the center of the stage, watching their cultural heritage being turned into entertainment. They felt mortified, confused, and something else, something they couldn't quite identify. Everyone looked so happy. The studio was full of laughter, smiles, and genuine joy. People were connecting with each other through shared silliness, creating a moment of pure fun that had nothing to do with jokes or punchlines. After the show, Ji-woo Kim, the young assistant producer, found Zim sitting alone in the green room, staring at their reflection in a mirror. "Hey," Ji-woo said gently, sitting down beside the small alien. "You okay? You look sad." "I am confused," Zim admitted. "Humans performed my sacred ritual incorrectly, but they seemed happy, joyful even. I do not understand how disrespecting my culture created positive emotions." Ji-woo thought for a moment. Maybe they weren't disrespecting it. Maybe they were just participating. Sometimes the best moments happen when people come together and do something silly, even if they don't completely understand it. But they did not know it was sacred. "Does that matter?" Ji-woo asked. "They felt connected to you, to each other, to something bigger than themselves. Isn't that what sacred rituals are supposed to do?" Zim looked at Ji-woo with those big purple eyes, processing this new information. "You mean humor is not about perfect understanding? It is about shared experience?" "Sometimes the most beautiful things happen by accident," Ji-woo smiled. "And sometimes the best way to honor something is to let other people find their own joy in it." That night, Zim watched the television broadcast replay, seeing their sacred ritual transformed into a moment of pure human happiness. For the first time, they wondered if maybe their scientific approach to humor had been missing the most important element, the magic of unexpected connection. Maybe comedy wasn't a science to be solved, but an art to be shared. Minji Song had been studying psychology for 3 years, specializing in how laughter could help people heal from trauma and illness. When she heard about the alien who accidentally made everyone laugh, she knew she had to meet them. What she didn't expect was how much Zim would teach her about the true power of humor. Zim, Minji explained as they walked through Seoul National University Hospital. I want to show you something different about laughter. It's not just entertainment, it's medicine. Zim clutched their ever-present notebook, filled with equations and theories about human humor mechanics. Medicine? Do you mean laughter produces chemical compounds that affect human biology? This is fascinating. I must document the molecular structure of therapeutic humor. Minji smiled as she led the tiny, sparkling alien toward the pediatric ward. Just be yourself, okay? Don't try to be funny, just talk to the kids. The children's hospital wing was painted in bright colors with cartoon characters on the walls, but it couldn't hide the reality of sick children dealing with treatments and procedures far beyond their years. Minji had been volunteering here for months, using humor therapy to help kids cope with their medical challenges. Everyone, Minji announced to a group of young patients gathered in the playroom, I brought a very special friend to meet you. This is Zim, and they're from another planet. 7-year-old Juan, who was undergoing treatment for leukemia, looked up from his coloring book with wide eyes. His head was bald from chemotherapy, but his curiosity was as bright as any healthy child's. Are you really an alien? Juan asked. Yes, I am from the Andromeda Galaxy, Zim replied formally, pulling out their tablet to show star charts. I am here conducting research on human behavioral patterns, specifically the phenomenon you call laughter. Why do you look like a pretty rainbow rock? Asked Suwon, a 6-year-old girl with a cast on her leg. Zim blinked their large purple eyes and considered the question with scientific seriousness. Ah, excellent observation. My species evolved on a planet with high crystal mineral content. Our cellular structure incorporated crystalline matrices over millions of years, allowing us to process light more efficiently and communicate through harmonic frequencies. The children stared at Zim, not understanding half the words, but fascinated by the earnest explanation. So you're like a singing rainbow? Juan asked. That is remarkably accurate for simplified terminology, Zim nodded approvingly. Though technically I'm more of a harmonically resonant, light-refracting biological crystal matrix. 10-year-old Junho started giggling. You talk funny. Do all aliens use big words? Big words? Zim looked confused. These are standard scientific terms. On my planet, we begin learning quantum mechanics in what you would call kindergarten. What's quantum mechanics? Soon asked. Zim's eyes lit up with excitement. They loved teaching. Oh, it is how very tiny particles behave in ways that seem impossible. For example, a particle can be in 2 places at once, just like how I sometimes feel like I am both understanding and not understanding human humor simultaneously. The kids burst into laughter at Zim's genuine confusion about their own emotional state. Can you show us your rainbow colors? Juan asked hopefully. Certainly. Zim began to glow softly, their skin shifting through gentle blues and greens. This occurs when my emotional processing centers are activated. Different emotions produce different chromatic patterns. What color is happy? Junho wanted to know. Zim concentrated, and warm golden light rippled across their crystalline features. This appears to be happiness, though I am still learning to identify human emotional states in myself. What about when you're confused? Soon asked. Immediately, Zim's skin began swirling with rapid purple and orange spirals. Like this. This happens very frequently on your planet. The children were delighted, clapping and asking Zim to show different emotions. Soon the entire pediatric ward was filled with giggles as Zim accidentally became a living mood ring, changing colors based on their reactions to the children's questions. Do you eat human food? Asked Juan. I tried something called pizza yesterday, Zim replied seriously. I do not understand why humans put dairy products from cows onto bread circles with tomato paste and call it food. It seems like several different meals mixed together by accident. The kids were rolling with laughter now, not because Zim was trying to be funny, but because their innocent observations about everyday things were absolutely hilarious when viewed through alien eyes. For the first time since arriving on Earth, Zim stopped taking notes. They looked around at these young humans who were dealing with serious illnesses, yet they were laughing purely because of joy and wonder. There were no complex joke structures, no perfect timing, no scientific formulas, just the simple pleasure of sharing something new and strange together. "Minji," Zim whispered, as the children continued asking questions. "They are not laughing at my humor techniques. They are laughing because I am different and they find different things delightful." Minji nodded, watching as Juan carefully touched Zim's glowing hand with wonder. Sometimes the best medicine isn't about curing what's wrong. It's about celebrating what makes us special. That day Zim learned that humor wasn't a puzzle to solve. It was a gift to share, and everyone had their own unique way of giving it. After weeks of studying human humor like it was advanced quantum physics, Zim finally made a decision that surprised everyone, including themselves. They marched into Dr. Minjun's office one morning, glowing with determination, and announced they wanted to perform stand-up comedy. "I have been approaching this all wrong," Zim declared, spreading their research notes across Minjun's desk. "I have been trying to decode human humor when I should have been sharing alien perspectives." Minjun looked up from his coffee, which Zim still insisted on calling heated bean water dependency liquid. "I want to do comedy on stage in front of people. Yes, Jin Park has agreed to let me perform at his club. Tae, Jiho, Hana, Minji, and Jiwoo will all be there for moral support. It is time for me to conduct the ultimate field test. 3. Nights later, Jin's comedy club was packed with curious humans who had heard rumors about the alien comedian. Word had spread through social media after Zim's television appearance, and now everyone wanted to see the tiny, sparkling being who made people laugh just by existing. Backstage, Zim paced nervously, their crystalline skin shifting through anxious, purple and orange swirls. They had abandoned their usual scientific equipment, carrying only a small notepad with observations they'd collected over the past month. "You'll be great," Hana encouraged, adjusting Zim's tiny microphone headset. "Just be yourself." "But what if myself is not funny to humans who are expecting comedy?" Zim worried. "What if I accidentally activate my mating display lights again?" "Then we'll laugh about that too," Jiho grinned. "Trust me, you've got this." Jin took the stage to introduce their special guest. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome someone who's traveled further than any of us to be here tonight. From the Andromeda Galaxy, here's Zim 7. The audience applauded as Zim walked onto the small stage, looking like a nervous, glowing child in oversized clothes. The spotlight made their crystalline features sparkle like a disco ball. "Hello, Earth humans of comedy establishment," Zim began, their voice shaking slightly. "I have been on your planet for 47 days, 12 hours, and 23 minutes, and I still do not understand most of what you do." A few people chuckled encouragingly. "For example," Zim continued, relaxing slightly, "you celebrate the passage of time by setting small fires on sweet bread. I observed this ritual at something called a birthday party. You put tiny flames on cake, make a wish, then blow out the fire and eat the bread. This seems like a very dangerous way to mark aging. On my planet, we simply change colors to indicate another year of existence. Much safer, no fire hazards." The audience was warming, up smiling at Zim's innocent confusion. "I also discovered that humans carry portable weather deflection devices called umbrellas. These devices are supposed to protect you from water falling from sky, but I have observed that they break in strong wind, poke other humans in crowded areas, and require manual operation. This seems highly inefficient. Why not just develop water-resistant skin like my species? Much more practical." People were starting to laugh now, not at Zim, but with them, enjoying this fresh perspective on everyday things. "But the most confusing thing," Zim said, warming to their topic, "is your language expressions. Someone told me a person was dying of laughter, so I immediately contacted emergency medical services. I spent 20 minutes explaining to the dispatcher that someone needed urgent care for fatal humor exposure. The dispatcher seemed very confused about my concern for this life-threatening comedy situation. The audience burst into laughter, and Zim's skin began glowing with happy golden light. I have also learned that when humans say it's raining cats and dogs, no actual animals fall from the sky. I spent an entire afternoon looking up, waiting to document this incredible weather phenomenon." Very disappointing. Just regular water. No pets involved. And your transportation systems, Zim continued, gaining confidence as the laughter grew louder. You have something called rush hour, where everyone tries to travel at exactly the same time, creating massive inefficiencies. Then you complain about traffic. This is like if my entire planet decided to eat dinner simultaneously, then wondered why the food preparation centers were overwhelmed. By now, the audience was thoroughly enjoying Zim's earnest bewilderment about human society. Their innocent observations made everyone see their daily routines in a completely new way. But you know what I have learned, Zim said, looking out at the laughing crowd. Humans do many strange, inefficient, confusing things, and somehow, this makes you absolutely delightful. Your weird customs, your broken umbrellas, your heated bean water addiction, it is all wonderfully, beautifully ridiculous. The audience erupted in applause and laughter. For the first time since arriving on Earth, Zim felt the pure joy of making others happy simply by being themselves. They weren't solving the mystery of human humor, they were participating in it, adding their own unique voice to the universal language of laughter. As they left the stage, glowing with happiness and pride, Zim realized they had finally found their place in the grand comedy of existence. 3 months after Zim's successful comedy debut, Dr. Minjun received the strangest phone call of his scientific career. It wasn't actually a phone call. It was a holographic transmission from the Andromedan Science Council, appearing suddenly in his office at 3 a.m. Dr. Kim, said a shimmering blue figure that looked like Zim's much more serious older relative. We need to discuss your planet's humor research subject. Minjun rubbed his eyes, wondering if he was dreaming. You mean Zim? Yes, Zim 7's research reports have become problematic. Problematic how? The Andromedan official looked embarrassed. They are too entertaining. Our Science Council meetings have turned into comedy sessions. Last week, our Supreme Commander laughed so hard at Zim's report about human birthday cake fire rituals that she fell off her crystal throne. Our productivity has decreased by 40%. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, other alien civilizations were having similar experiences. The Rigelians, known for their serious nature and mathematical precision, had started requesting copies of Zim's Earth-Human Behavioral Analysis reports. The Centaurians, typically focused on intergalactic politics, were holding special meetings just to read Zim's observations about human customs. Within weeks, Dr. Minjun's research facility became the most popular destination in the galaxy. Beings from 12 different star systems began arriving, all wanting to understand this mysterious thing called human humor that had made Zim 7 famous throughout the cosmos. The first to arrive were 3 Vulcarian delegates, tall gray beings with extra-large brains who spoke in monotone voices. We have traveled 847 light-years to observe human laughter mechanisms, announced their leader, Kex Prime. Our species has never understood the purpose of making noise to express pleasure. We find it inefficient. Zim was delighted to have fellow scientists to work with, even if they didn't understand why humans found anything funny. Next came a delegation of Betelgeusian blob creatures who communicated through color changes and had no concept of verbal humor. They were fascinated by the idea that humans used sounds and words to create joy. Your species makes vibrations with mouthholes to produce happiness, gurgled Blob Chancellor Gloop. This is revolutionary. We only know how to make others happy, by changing our texture from smooth to fuzzy. The research facility quickly expanded to accommodate visitors from across the galaxy. Dr. Minjun found himself running what was essentially an intergalactic comedy school, with Zim as the head instructor. Today, Zim announced to a classroom full of aliens, we will observe humans in their natural environment, the shopping mall. The field trip was unlike anything Earth had ever seen. Humans shopping for clothes suddenly found themselves surrounded by curious aliens taking notes on their behavior. A family buying shoes discovered a 3-eyed Arcturian carefully documenting their decision-making process. Fascinating, noted Zix9, a purple tentacled being from the Whirlpool galaxy. The young human becomes emotionally distressed when forced to choose between nearly identical foot coverings. This is comedy gold. The aliens were learning that humor wasn't just about jokes. It was about recognizing the absurd moments in everyday life that everyone could relate to. Back at the facility, different species began sharing their own forms of humor. The Rigelians demonstrated their mathematical jokes, which only made sense if you understood 17-dimensional calculus, while the Centaurians shared political satire from their four-government system. You see, Zim explained to the gathered beings, every species has their own way of finding joy in the ridiculous. Humans laugh at their inefficient customs, Rigelians enjoy numerical paradoxes, and Betelgeusians find pleasure in unexpected texture changes. The revelation was stunning. Humor was truly universal, even if every species expressed it differently. Within 6 months, Zim had established the first intergalactic comedy research center, with branch offices on 17 different planets. They were no longer trying to solve humor like a scientific equation. They were celebrating it as the universe's most beautiful art form. The secret, Zim told a gathering of comedy researchers from across the galaxy, is not to understand humor perfectly. The secret is to share your own unique perspective and find joy in the perspectives of others. Dr. Minjun watched proudly as his tiny alien friend had become the galaxy's most famous comedian scientist, bringing beings from across the universe together through the simple power of shared laughter. And somewhere in the back of his mind, he couldn't help but think, Earth was about to become very, very interesting. 5 years had passed since Zim first materialized in Seoul's streets, confused about human laughter and convinced they had witnessed a terrible disease. Now, standing in front of their brand-new comedy venue, the Cosmic Chuckle, Zim could hardly believe how much had changed. The grand opening night was unlike anything Earth had ever seen. The red carpet was actually a shimmering rainbow pathway that changed colors as guests walked across it. Reporters from 17 different planets were covering the event, their various recording devices creating a light show that rivaled any fireworks display. "Zim! Zim!" called out a journalist from the Galactic Entertainment Network, her forearms managing multiple microphones simultaneously. "How does it feel to have created the universe's first truly intergalactic comedy club?" Zim, now wearing a tiny tuxedo made of crystalline fabric that sparkled under the cameras, paused thoughtfully. 5 years ago, I came to Earth to study human laughter like it was a disease. Now I realize I was the one who needed healing. From taking everything too seriously. The crowd of mixed humans and aliens laughed appreciatively. In the past 5 years, this had become normal in Seoul. Humans had grown accustomed to sharing their city with beings from across the galaxy, all drawn by the promise of universal comedy. Inside the new venue, the scene was wonderfully chaotic. A Betelgeusian blob creature named Gloop was on stage, telling jokes by changing textures rapidly. The audience, a mix of humans, Rigelians, Centaurians, and a dozen other species, was laughing in their various ways. Humans chuckled and clapped. Rigelians flashed mathematical equations in the air, and the Centaurians made harmonious whistling sounds. "Watch this," Gloop announced, suddenly becoming spiky all over. Why did the smooth skin cross the space station? Because they wanted to get to the other texture. They immediately became fluffy like a giant cotton ball. The humans in the audience were delighted by the physical comedy, even if they didn't fully understand the Betelgeusian cultural context. Meanwhile, a group of Centaurians were puzzled, but charmed by the concept of texture-based humor. At another table, Dr. Minjun sat with his old friends Tai, Jiho, Hana, Minji, and Jiwoo, watching the incredible scene unfold around them. They had all become part of this intergalactic comedy community, each contributing their own expertise to help different species understand each other's humor. Remember when we thought Zim was just a confused little alien who didn't understand jokes? Hana whispered to the group. "Now they're the most famous comedian in 12 star systems," Jiho replied, shaking his head in amazement. On stage, a Rigelian named QX7 was attempting stand-up comedy for the first time, telling jokes based on mathematical principles that only other mathematically inclined beings could fully appreciate. But the humans in the audience were laughing anyway, charmed by the alien's earnest delivery and the absurdity of jokes about hypergeometric functions. The probability of a quark being in two places at once, Cook7 announced seriously, is exactly the same as my chances of understanding human emotional responses to fermented grape juice consumption. The mixed audience erupted in laughter, each species finding their own reason to be amused. Zim watched from the wings, their hearts swelling with joy. They had learned something far more valuable than the science of humor. They had discovered that laughter was the universe's universal translator. It didn't matter if you understood every word or cultural reference. What mattered was the shared experience of finding joy together. As the evening continued, Zim took the stage for their headline performance. But instead of their usual routine, they did something different. 5 years ago, Zim began, their voice carrying easily through the packed venue. I came to Earth thinking I could solve laughter like a mathematical equation. I was wrong. Laughter isn't something you solve. It's something you share. They looked out at the incredible audience. Humans sitting next to tentacled beings, crystalline entities chatting with blob creatures, mechanical robots laughing alongside organic life forms. Tonight we have beings from 47 different worlds, speaking over 200 languages, with completely different biologies and cultures. But we're all here for the same reason, because laughter makes us feel less alone in this vast, weird, wonderful universe. The audience, every species, every being, responded with their own form of applause. It was a symphony of joy that had never been heard before in the cosmos. As Zim looked out at the crowd, they realized they had found something better than understanding humor. They had found the magic of sharing it, one laugh at a time, across the infinite expanse of space. The universe, it turned out, was a much funnier place when everyone was laughing together.